Hey everybody, St. Paul here in the historic Creation Audio Studios. And guess what? It is episode 49 of Music on the Run. And my guest, Tommy Barbarella. Hey everybody, St. Paul here. Welcome to episode 49 of Music on the Run. Man, it's hard to believe we're almost at 50. Today we've got such a great guest, an old buddy of mine. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about my shirt. And those of you who are listening, you can't see it. I'm sporting the Minnesota Vikings shirt. Yes, we won by a whole 2 points yesterday. We are 1-4 now here in the 2021-22 season. Yes. I have another reason I'm wearing it, because my guest and I played a concert at the Vikings training grounds a couple of years ago, I think that was. And he has other connections to the Vikings, and we'll get to that as well. I do want to say a big thank you to my patrons. And if you don't know what patrons are, basically they are hanging with us and taking care of us financially. They have a monthly stipend that they give to us so we can put on this show, video and audio. If you want to know more about that, go to www.patreon.com/Music on the Run podcast. Really helps us do this thing, and every little bit helps, and we sure couldn't do it without those patrons. In fact, I want to do a shout out to a couple of them. One is William Dean. Thank you as usual for your support. You always support me in my music career as well. And I'm going to say this wrong. I've been really trying to practice. Haramasa Akida. Haramasa Akida, I believe, from Japan. Thank you so much for your support. I so appreciate it. Anyways, check it out. Patreon.com/Music on the Run podcast. All right. Oh, one other piece of bad news. I might as well share it with you because this is what's going on. My little tiny dog of 15 years, a Gypsy, I almost called her the older one, Gypsy Lou, passed away yesterday in my arms. We thought we were going to have to postpone this podcast, but it was really tough, man. My kid and her boyfriend were with me, and of course my wife was out of town. So little Gypsy went over to Rainbow Bridge yesterday, and man, it's always tough to lose a part of the family like that. Our little pets become parts of the family, don't they? But anyway, we don't know what we're going to do, if we're going to get a new dog or, a cat. Are you people cat people? My kids are cat people now, and they're trying to teach me how to be a cat grandfather, pardon me. It's starting to go the other direction, but I don't know. I want to start traveling and doing all that kind of stuff, and, you get a brand new pet, you're in it for another 15 years or something like that. Anyways, we love our little animals, don't we? What else is going on? Hey, signed up for Grandma's Marathon in June with the Geezers of Gear. Yes, 26.2. I don't know what I was thinking, but we're back on it. Got a little.
You can be like a year older then.
Yeah, it's not bright, is it? And we are all ready to go. We've got, how many? 4 of us signed up. 2 for the marathon and 2 for the half?
Yeah.
Okay. Davide is sitting here. Davide is one of the Geezers of Gears and happens to be the producer of the show. I want to do a little shout out to my buddy Tanner Montague, who is wrapping up his tenure here as intern at Music on the Run. He has been such a godsend. He's done such a great job. I'm going to trick him into maybe doing the 50th anniversary or the 50th episode in a couple of weeks here. But publicly want to just say thank you so much, Tanner, for all you've done, all the great work you've done. You've really up the quality of this thing and just brought such great spirit to this. So thank you so much, and you've done a great job on music on Funk Friday as well. Yeah. So, and he's sitting over here as well. I'm pointing right at him. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Okay, actually, this is all about me. You're never going to get on the show, Tommy.
I got to go now.
My guest today grew up in Minneapolis. He's an incredible keyboard player, producer, arranger, session musician, and writer, and I've been privileged to call him a friend for, I don't know, a long, long time. He's toured with people like Prince, Johnny Lang, and so many others. Please welcome my buddy Tommy Barbarella.
Thank you.
Hey, we got an applause out there.
I like that.
Yeah. Thank you for that applause, as my mother used to say. So I'm sporting the jersey for the Minnesota Vikings.
The day after.
Day after our first victory.
It was actually our second victory.
Is it? Can you tell I'm not watching?
A little bit. It's all right.
Is it really?
You're a smart man.
Yeah, well, I just can't. I can't do it. It just rips my soul out to spend, whatever 3 hours, and we get nowhere. It's just, what are we gonna do about our Vikes?
I don't know. It's a curse. I say it's not a choice. It's like I grew up with it. You can't. Like I have a brother-in-law who went over to the other side.
Which side is that? Not the Packers?
Yeah, at some point in the 80s, I think he just one day decided he was going to be a Packer fan. No real connection, like he's not from there, whatever. My wife's from Wisconsin, so we have a divided house.
Do you?
Yeah.
How does that go on a Sunday?
It depends. I'm the only one really emotionally involved, usually. But I'm doing well this year. My daughters have given me a lot of kudos for not getting so mad.
Really?
Yeah.
A little anger management, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but
I think it's age.
Yeah, I'm tempering.
So you and I also did. Not only have we done the Minneapolis Funk All Stars gig, but we've done gigs with Patty and stuff. I kind of think of what other gigs that we've done over the years together. I mean, they all kind of become one gig.
They do. It's like you remember the people like Billy or Bobby Vandal, or it's like, well, TC Jammers. That was a run we did.
That's true.
TC Jammers, .2. Right. That was fun. Those were some fun days.
Oh my God, that was a great band.
Dave Island, Jelly Bean. That was funky.
It really was funky.
Yeah.
That was back in my old partying days too.
Yeah.
Ouch! I still have a hangover.
That's why you don't remember it so well.
Oh my God. Yeah, those were the days, man. We were still young bucks and
making those burgers back in the kitchen.
Totally.
Bunkers.
Man, that was fun.
Yeah.
So you grew up in what part of Minneapolis?
I actually grew up in St. Paul.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I went to Hill Murray High School in Maplewood.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of like, so you went to Holy Angels.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Got it. Co-ed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hockey school.
Were you a hockey player?
No, I was in the pep band.
Oh, got it.
I played trumpet.
No way. Is that what you started on?
That's what I played in school, In our family, we all had to take 2 years of piano lessons. I played trumpet in school band and did it all through high school. Then I quit because it was just too much work. Those brass instruments. Ugh.
Yeah.
But
you took 2 years of piano. That was the mandate in the family.
Yeah, and then I kept going. So I studied classical all through 1 year of college. I was a music major for 1 year.
Where'd you go?
St. John's for 1 year. Then I transferred to the U of M. Yeah, that was like the turning point in my life. It was that summer of 85.
Oh. Yeah.
I used to see you down at First Ave.
Oh.
Dancing out on the dance floor.
You're
your
just
shiny
younger
suit
than me to probably look at that and I mean, because I came before you in the Prince camp.
Yeah, a few years.
What was that like, just to see someone like I'm 2 years older than you?
Yeah, it was 2 years. So, dude, it was like this. I was in a band called Z-Bop with, I don't know if you know any of the guys, Giovanni Ford, Ron Heine. So we had that house gig down at Felty's.
After
the Players.
Oh,
right?
My God.
And we kind of traded off with Dreamscape. Thad Spencer's band. Brian Gallagher was in the band.
Lord.
Lisa Keith.
Yeah.
Those were some fun days. But at the time, I was living with Giovanni, the singer, and back then it's like you didn't have Spotify. That you only had the albums you had. That's what you listened to, right? And I think the Family album probably got played more than any other record that year in our apartment.
Really?
Yep. And I remember we were down at First Ave one night, and I'm like, "Who's that guy? He thinks he's so cool. He's like in a shiny suit, or whatever." He's like, "Dude, that's St. Paul." And I'm like, "What?" I'll never forget that night. That was funny. And you were out
What was
there.
I out causing problems?
You were
Dancing or
dancing. You
whatever?
were on the dance floor dancing. I'm like, "Who's that guy?" Like the
See,
voice we listened to every day in our apartment. Like,
oh my God.
but yeah, that was like the first time I actually saw you. Yeah, that would have been 85.
I was right in the thick of it.
Yeah, that summer was amazing. I mean, that summer, so I came back from college at St. John's and I got in this band. And they're like, "Yeah, you want to try out for the band?" And we just played at Felty's. I'm like, "What? Felty's?"
Big deal back in those
It was
days.
that was the coolest.
Felty's was the cool
It was
gig.
the cool club because I'd gone down there and I wasn't old enough to get in, but I used to stand outside in the atrium, whatever.
I had a fake ID.
To I
Yeah.
didn't. I would stand outside to listen for Ricky solos.
Did you? Oh,
Yeah,
he's talking. You guys are talking about my brother Ricky, who's a great keyboard player as well.
yeah. So that summer, I got in that band. We played. Remember Scotty's on 7th?
Barely.
Yeah. So I think Samoa was playing there one night, and I don't know. It was just heady times. It was like everyone was around. You know, the dudes from the time. It was like I was meeting people, and I was just my head was exploding. Like this is amazing. I'm like living in Purple Rain.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
but Ricky like let me sit in that night, and I was like, "What?
Really?
Okay, yeah." He didn't really care that night. If you know what I mean. It was late in the
Probably
night.
gave him time to go get a little scotch and a sugar
Yeah,
rocks.
but I was like, I just remember going home that night. This is the greatest night of my life. I met Jimmy Jam. I got to sit in on Ricky's stuff, and it was just
Oh,
like,
that's so cool. It's
Yeah.
amazing what sticks with you from those
I was
times,
18. You know, it was just like
Oh yeah.
that was yeah, those are moments you never forget. But yeah, that's when it all started. It was that summer.
When were you playing with the Steels? Was it around that same time?
Well, that would have been like 3 years later. So yeah, so I had been in different bands, and I was out in a band out on Lake Minnetonka. I'd kind of put that band together. Houdini's. It was one summer in Excelsior, that place. Geraldine Steele was singing with us,
Whoa.
and she, I guess, hired me or asked me to come play with the family, and they were
Right.
playing more. The Fine Line was new; they were playing there. But that was the band with Joey, with Finger, with Sonny. Sonny and I came in at the same time. Sean was still playing bass.
Oh my God, that's great.
So
Daryl Boudreau,
Daryl,
is he there?
yep, and Todd Marks, who I saw last night at a gig I played. I hadn't seen him probably since then. It was crazy.
Todd Marks toured with me on the New Kids on the Block tour.
Really?
Yes, he did. When we played nothing and it was all the dad. That's a story for another day. So I just invited my drinking buddies to go on the road with me.
Oh,
Him,
my God.
Finger, Rob Arthur.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Wow.
So you played with the Steels. I played with the Steels. JD Steele, you guys, is like, the Steele family is a complete legends in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and way beyond. Just go check them out, Google them, whatever. But JD took me under his wing when I bet you I was 16 years old. He took me to the Children's Theater recording studio. I'll never forget the song. It was called "Find Yourself Another Man." Find yourself another man. This kind of love I just can't stand. Doesn't that sound like a JD song?
Yep.
So, but I played all the instruments. He just let me go and kind of showed me around what that whole thing was like. So the Steels were so instrumental in bringing me along, not only my own family, but them
Me
as
too.
well.
Yeah.
And they came from Gary, Indiana,
Yep.
I believe, up here in late 70s, early 80s, something like that. I don't know that year. I'm making that up right now. Go fact check me.
Probably early 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually spent a night at their parents' home in Gary. We played a show down in Chicago, like a college gig or something, and then we stayed in Chicago. And then I don't know why, but the next night we ended up crashing at their parents' house in Gary. And the next morning, JD got up. He wanted to go visit the high school, like he went to see his teacher stuff. And Finger went with him.
No.
And he, you know, there were no white people in Gary at that time. I mean, it's late 80s. But Finger was just like, all the kids were pointing at me like they'd never seen a white person in person before.
Wow, really?
But yeah. But great family. And JD, yeah, same for me. Like, I had a 4-track at my house, and him and Daryl would come over and we'd write a lot of songs. We actually wrote their first Christmas show in my studio. It's probably 89, 88. It was 88. And I'll never forget, my parents came to that show, and it was super fun. I'd never heard gospel singing up close, like in the space, like, and they're so powerful. But yeah, they took me under the wing, and I remember JD met my parents that night, and he's like, "Your son has a great career ahead of him," and I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
he said that." And my parents at that time still weren't really sold on the whole music thing.
I was going to ask you that.
I was not supported. It's like, it's a nice hobby, son. You can't make a living at that. And
There's some truth in that.
yeah, well, yeah, it's things kind of come full circle, but yeah, it was. That's why I went to college. That's why I finished college. I was touring with Prince when I finished my degree at the U of M in journalism through independent study, just because I
needed that degree. You did that for your parents.
I did it for my parents.
Yep.
And my Catholic guilt kicked in, and I just had to do it. I remember Prince said that day, I told him or whatever, and he's like, "Nobody talked to Prince, or nobody talked to Tommy. He's going to write a book about us or something." Because I said I had a degree in journalism or whatever.
So literally.
A little late to the game on that one.
Yeah.
Huh?
There have been a lot of books. Do you participate in those at all?
Some. I've always been pretty choosy about who I talk to.
We're talking about books about Prince, you guys. And Prince.
Even just doing interviews, it's like, there's obviously great writers like Alan Light, who I will always say yes to. He was, did interviews with him when he was editor of Vibe, like way back.
How did you get in the bubble? I mean, you were in local bands. You had to convince your parents that music was for you. I mean, let's start there.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of speaking to high school kids, some college kids, where I say, my parents didn't really support my music, and it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to do everything on my own, and I was still moonlighting, being a pretty bad student at the U, but I got my degree. But I literally had to do it all on my own. It reminds me of a story like Steve. Did you know Steve Faison's brother, Sonny?
Yeah.
Remember Sonny Faison?
Yeah.
I don't know how I met him, but when I was first starting out, you grew up in a family with music. You had gear all around you like this. Yeah. It's like, I didn't,
Right.
And gear was expensive,
Oh, yeah.
And as a college kid, it's like, you just can't go out and buy a synthesizer. Back then, especially, they cost so much. And so I'd gotten in the band, but I didn't have an amp. I didn't have all the stuff. And I don't know how I met Sonny, but he's like, "Come by my house. You can borrow some stuff." And I walked into a room, some studio or and he had tons of gear, and I was just like, "Wow, so much equipment." And he's like, "Someday you will too."
And he's right.
He's right, but he was so kind, and he let me borrow a bunch of. I don't remember what it was, but when he passed, I mentioned that story, and Steve had no idea about that.
Really?
Yeah, he was like, "That is so cool. I had no idea." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't even know how I met him." But, there were, you're talking about people coming up that, help you out. But yeah, I did it all on my own. And it was it made me better. It made me work harder. Nothing was handed to me musically. You know, I was like, yeah, I had some talent, but you know, I mostly inherited a good work ethic from my parents. Really old school. My dad was like World War II. They were a little older generation, and but that's how I grew up. Very strict, work hard. You know, practice a lot. So that's what I did.
You paid your dues, man.
Yeah, yeah. So Geraldine asked me to play with the Steels. I played with the Steels. We were playing the Fine Line every month or every like one weekend a month. We played there a lot. And Prince started coming down because Sonny and I joined the band same time. So he knew Sonny.
Sonny Thompson.
Sonny Thompson.
Okay.
They'd grown up together. So Prince would come down and sit in that balcony with, what's her face? Batman or
Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger, yeah.
Come on, how can you forget her name?
Yeah. They would sit up there and watch, and everyone was saying, he's watching you, he's got his eye on you, he likes you. And I'm like, what, really? And then nothing happened. But then I got a call one day so he was doing a record on Margaret Cox called MC Flash, and most of the band was Mambo's Combo, and Steve Cherowon, the keyboard player, decided he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do the tour. They were going to talk of opening for Prince on a tour in Europe. And so they called me and like, can you come out and start rehearsing with Margaret's band and out of Paisley? We're going to be opening for him on the European tour. I'm like, yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. So I go out there and start doing that. And that's when first time I met Prince was at that first rehearsal. And it wasn't too long into those rehearsals. It might have been like day 2 or 3. And he said, Tommy, Sonny, Michael, can you want to help me with a couple songs after rehearsal? Like, yeah.
Yes, I can.
And so like hauled our gear over to Studio B, set up, and he showed us the first song, and we recorded it. And, you know, he's just like, just play whatever you feel. Just play, you know, whatever you're hearing. And we did it. We kind of helped him arrange it and get to the point, and that song was Diamonds and Pearls.
What?
Yeah. I wasn't even in the band yet. It was just kind of like, let's see what these 3 guys, how we can work together in the studio.
He plucked you out of MC Flash, said, come with me and help me, and he was just auditioning you without auditioning you formally.
Yeah, so, you know, it was like literally parts on that record I just did on the fly, like, you know, the little bell line answer to Diamonds and Pearls, bing, 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 bing. I just did that. You know, I just
really,
like, you know, that's what he said. His keyboard player's just like, produce it, Tommy, produce it. Put your hands down. Just what you know, what would you do if you were producing it as a record? That's how his keyboard players approached the live thing. You know, fill it out with these sounds. You know. So, and what I didn't remember, and Michael Bland has reminded me, was that later that same day, like that night, after the gig, after the combo, he called us back out there to record some more, and we recorded Live for Love, which ended up on Diamonds and Pearls as well. I remember Sheila was in the studio with him, and made me even extra nervous.
Yeah, because she was cute.
Because Sheila, he was in there.
She was cute. I'm looking for something here because I want to bring this up. And of course, my iPad is just giving me all sorts of problems. Here's what Michael... No, don't look.
I can't. You think I can read that without my glasses?
Don't read my homework. Michael Bland says about you, he's got funk, he's got style. He's a pleasure to know, to work with, and to call a friend. Mm. That's from Michael B to you. I called a couple of your buddies.
Michael.
Tell me about Michael.
Probably the most instrumental person in my career. I mean...
Why is that?
Well, Prince asked him about me when he was apparently checking me out. And Michael had seen me playing with Steels, I think. And he vouched for me. He's like, yeah, he's funky. And it was like...
Had you played with Michael before? Or?
I hadn't. You just heard me.
Where did he hear you?
Playing with the Steels. I think like Uptown Jazz Fest or something.
Oh,
and,
sure.
But yeah, I don't know. Michael's brought me into so many projects, just monumental stuff like that. The Georgia gig over in Italy we did for many years.
Right.
I don't know, you know, Sonny Thompson too, the three of us, we've done a lot together over the years.
Sure have.
Those guys.
Tell me about the three of you in NPG. Get us to where Prince asks you to be in the band. How did that all, what was that conversation like?
Well, as you know, there was no conversation. It's just all shrouded in mystery and coolness and like, what just happened? I don't know. So yeah, I wasn't in the band. We'd recorded these songs. I went out and did that tour, which wasn't MC Flash. At the last minute, he decided not to put her record out, not to bring her out as the opening act, but he turned that same band into a backing band for Mavis Staples.
Oh,
so
the record Ricky and I did with her probably.
Yeah, with the
House in Order.
I think that was later.
Was that later? 96,
later.
I think we did. 94.
This was Jaguar.
Okay.
This was like, yeah, Miko was playing on some of that stuff. It was, but you know, out on the shows, we did all the classic Staples singer stuff. But it was just like, so you talked about cats. So we have a cat.
Oh yeah,
we got a cat because we didn't want to get our dog yet. The cat's getting kind of old now. The cat's name? Mavis. I ran into her a few years ago, and I had to tell her, I'm like, you know, our cat's named after you.
Oh my God.
And Mavis called me Hollywood. That was when she meets people, she gives them a nickname because she can't remember anyone's name, but she'll remember her name for you, right? So we all had names, and you so pretty, you should be in Hollywood. I'm gonna call you Hollywood.
That's pretty cool that a Hall of Famer dubbed you Hollywood. Yeah.
And I thought she gave Billy the nickname Reverend. There's discrepancy on that one, but Sonny was definitely Rain Man.
Is that right? Perfect.
And Margaret was Sunshine.
Was she then in the backing band for Mavis then?
She sang backup for Mavis.
Oof. Well, that's a whole another conversation.
I know. We had a great time. That was and Doug Nelson played bass.
One of my mentors on the bass. Great Minneapolis bass player who passed, 15 years ago, longer, something like that. Anyway.
Yeah. So we did that tour. That was summer of like 90.
Right.
And then came back and nothing happened. And then in December, I got a call from Therese, who asked if I was available to play Rock in Rio with Prince in January.
That was your first gig with Prince?
Yeah, 200,000 people. First gig.
Oh.
I don't remember anything.
Because you were terrified?
Terrified.
Right. So
it was scary enough.
How old were you then? About?
22, 23.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did like maybe one show at the Glam Slam or something like that.
Oh, in those days.
Maybe a little warm up. I don't know, but yeah, first concert, 200,000 people.
Whew.
And my sustain pedal didn't work.
Is that funny?
I found out when Purple Rain intro starts. Oh. I'm like,
clam. Not even clam, but isn't that funny? What you remember from that is that the trouble that you went through. Instead of looking out there and going, I'm really here in front of these many people.
It's hard. It was hard to enjoy a lot. A lot of the gig was hard to enjoy because, I mean, you're often on nerves and pins and needles because of him, because of the pressure of the gig and not screwing up. And, you know, there was no safety net back then. There were no tracks. There were, you know, it was, and he relied heavily on the keyboard player, you know.
Oh, yeah.
In those first 2 years, Rosie Gaines was the other keyboard player, who, amazing singer, but she wasn't, and she could play some funky organ stuff.
Right.
She's a great church player. But all those other hundreds of parts were coming from me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What was the conversation like? Because I know when I was doing the family and Billy Carruthers was playing keyboards for us, he came up to him and said something to the fact, he's playing all these Claire Fisher arrangements. He's like, well, how come you're not using both hands right now?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't call for it right now. Well, yes, it does. Double it on a keyboard below.
Right.
Did he pull that kind of stuff on you?
Yeah, he never wanted to see you playing with one hand. It was like, what's your other hand doing? And then he would give you another part. And it would be a great funky part or whatever.
Of course.
But often hard to do at the same time, but you worked it till you did it. Yeah. And then you're juggling 5-6 parts, and then he asked for another one. I'm like, well, I can't. I'm already doing this. Figure out a way. And then it's like, okay, so if I hold the sustain pedal with this, if I split this keyboard and this and add another sound here, I can. So, a song like Diamonds and Pearls, I, was covering like 9 parts at once. Yeah, I remember there was a specific rehearsal when the pressure was crazy. We were about to debut that song, back when national television was a thing, when it was just networks. And we were performing it for the first time. I don't think it was out yet as a single. The record wasn't out yet. And we performed it at, I think it was Special Olympics, Metrodome, big, huge thing. But it was broadcast. It was like national television. So it was live. And, I kept clamming some certain things at the rehearsal. It was like, because it was literally trumpets, bells,
mayhem.
It was crazy.
Right.
And choreography.
And look cool, by the way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And look effortless like him,
Right.
And he had me stay after rehearsal and keep practicing my parts.
Like you were in school.
Yeah. That first year was pretty rough. He was rough on me.
What was his inspirational style? I set you up. I want to hear how you answer that one.
Well, like Michael says, fear is the great motivator,
But you said that in another interview, and I think it's okay that you bring that up. That whole camp did that.
Yeah.
And to let you off the hook, I've said that a million times. When I walked into the second coming of the time, Jesse ruled that thing like a James Brown gig.
Yeah.
Oh, you suck. You playing. I mean, and I love Jesse now, 35 years later, but he was awful to me. Was that kind of the same? That's how he inspired you?
I guess.
Yeah.
I remember Rosie like trying to stick up for me and like, I told him, you're being too hard on him.
Really? She went to bat for you, huh?
Yeah. But, I was just hanging on by a thread. I was just like happy to be there, of course. I'm like, I can't believe I have this gig.
Right.
And it was also back then, I remember we played, there used to be a music convention in Atlanta called Jack the Rapper, black music R&B convention. And I remember going there in that first year and playing Ain't No Way with Rosie, just me and her, the Aretha tune. I didn't see any other white people in the room.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like playing black music is an honor. It's like I've always like treated it with a lot of respect, like as a white person, like I have no business doing this. It's like, but I've approached it in a way of reverence where it's like I'm honored to be deemed good enough to play this music with you, so there was that pressure too for me. I was the only white guy in the band,
Right.
And there was a lot of things like that were like like Wendy says, like it's awesome. It's like amazing, but there's also tension for me, as someone who worked his way in, worked his way up, and it's like, yeah, I have talent, but yeah, the gospel thing didn't come naturally. I mean, I kind of, I always say it's like I'm a jack of many trades, master of none. Like, it's like, well, no, I'm not a great Latin player or this player, but I've studied all the genres enough to be able to do it, not do it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the worst thing a keyboard player who's not funky can do is like call up a clavinet patch, right? Like that can destroy a groove like nothing else.
Right.
So you learn that stuff early on. And
you were thrown very much like me into a situation that was not, it was a new cultural experience.
Totally.
Same for me.
Totally.
I had to learn. I came from a bebop background where I play everything the way I want to play it. Mm-hmm. That's how I was raised.
Yeah.
You get into the Prince bubble and it's like, oh, no. He will play it exactly like this, exactly either on top or behind the beat. Mm-hmm. You'll play it with two hands. You will dance, and you will do it exactly perfect every single time. Mm-hmm. That's what's called parts playing.
Yeah.
And there's a certain, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I was thrown into a situation where I had to assimilate into, I guess the groove is really the word I'm looking for, because it had to be done with such authenticity that wouldn't piss off the former or the fans of the time. For in my case, that's what Jesse was looking for. That's what Prince was looking for. Yeah. And whoa, I mean, talk about eyes opening. For me, as I look back at it 35 years later, it was the greatest college experience of my life. Mm-hmm. How do you view your tenure with that whole scene?
Same, totally the same. I've said that not a day goes by, a work day where I'm doing music where I don't apply something I learned during that time. I mean, just the amount of stuff.
Like what, for instance?
I have a phrase I use in rehearsals or in the studio where you're trying to find the right part, you're trying to find the right sound or the right arrangement, and it's like, well, it's got to be this. And my line is, well, it only works one way. And it's like, there's a right way and a wrong way, kind of. It's like there's certain things that's like, well, this, when something works and something doesn't.
Right.
It's like a groove, a part. It's like, no, not feeling it. And when it's right, it is. Mm-hmm. And then I say, well, yep, there it is. It only works one way. That's it.
Right.
I feel like I got that from him. And just, so many things. But the sense of fearlessness.
Right.
There were times when we'd be jamming. Sonny, Levi, they always knew what to play. And I figured it out later that, Levi's 27 comp rhythms were all different James Brown tunes. And it's like, right, he always knows what to play. It's all the right stuff. He was like, well, Sex Machine always works, or this always works, And it's like,
yeah.
But that repertoire of stuff, when we'd be jamming and I was like, I wasn't sure what to do. And he's like, come on, Tommy, put your hands down. And that was like a line he'd always use. Just put your hands down. And sometimes I'd put my hands down and 8 bars later, Tommy, lay out. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's not it. But, that's the learning experience. Even the simplest stuff, like simple church stuff, like I started applying after the gig with some of my other musician friends who didn't know any of that. So in a church band, usually gospel church, you usually have a piano player and an organ guy, right? Mm-hmm. So, 101 is, well, someone's on the 1, someone's on the 2. So if someone's going, bing, bap, bing, bap, the piano's on the 1, organ's on the 2, something like that, right. Or with like guitars and keys. And it's just that stuff that I didn't innately know any of that, but like when we played with the Jammers, it was like we would hit some really great grooves between you and me, Dave and Jellybean, because we all came from that same school.
Yeah.
And we could lock, one guitar's up high, one's down low, and doom, 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 doom.
Parts playing.
Yeah. So it's like, and that stuff most people don't ever really learn.
And you can't really teach them that. I don't think, unless you're let me rephrase that. We were taught that.
Yeah, we were.
But we were taught that by a camp that was like, learn or die.
Yeah.
And that kind of pressure, I think, on you and on me, and we put on ourselves, created that opportunity for us, even though it could have been hell at times when we were in it. But 35 years looking back, it was the best school I could have ever gone to.
Well, and, the militaristic approach, it's like, I hear recordings or I see videos of that first NPG band, that first year, even before the horns were there. Like we did Arsenio, or we played that whole show, the first one, and it is ferocious, and it's the tightest band. It's not just tight either. It's just like there's an intensity to it that is every note your life depends on, and it kind of did at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't ever hear that anymore in music and shows today. I don't hear it anymore. I didn't hear it from his bands later, to be honest. Not to take anything away from anyone else, but there was an energy, there was a ferociousness in that at that time in the early 90s that, yeah, it was interesting. We did play a gig at Glam Slam. It was the first show we played before we went to Rio. And I remember we were gathering before we went out, and Prince was looking around. We'd always do like a prayer gathering thing before going on stage. And he's looking around. He's like, wow, I don't even know Tommy. I mean, we had been in rehearsal for like 2-3 weeks or something.
Right.
So.
Did he ever really know you? Did you ever really know him?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny that people will say, what was he like? What was he like?
That's probably the question we get the most, right?
Yeah.
And you can't answer it. I say interesting, different, unique, can't explain, unexplainable. Enigma.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I had a very boss-employee relationship with him for my little tenure there in the 80s. Now, later, it was different because he couldn't have his thumb on me. And I feel we got along way better once I was out of the bands.
Yeah.
And it's not that we didn't get along when I was in the band. It just was a different vibe.
Yeah.
It was his show, and very much it should have been. Everything you touched would turn to that. Did you ever develop, this is a dumb question, but did you ever develop a true friendship with him? Could you in a working environment like that?
I think it was, in the end, I mean, he created a life for himself that those were his friendships.
It's true.
And I'm sure others will say different, but from what I saw, I mean, when he married Maite, I was at the reception at Paisley, and it was very small, but I'm posing for pictures with him and his dad.
Wow.
And it was like, I remember thinking, this is so weird. Everyone there.
Was it out of character, you think?
I mean, it was super cool in a way, too. It was like, wow, I'm honored. But we're all also on payroll. So it's good.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The friendship thing. To me, that's part of the sadness of it all. As time went on, I don't know. I didn't talk to him much after working. So I had started playing with Greasy Meal while we were still NPG. I don't remember exactly when, but we didn't rehearse on Sundays, so that was the Sunday night gig with Greasy. So I was able to do that. And then he took that band apart. So there was some time, and Greasy was kind of starting to explode, and I was having a great time. You know, it was such a different experience of not being told what to do, being with a band, you know.
Yeah.
Like democracy or whatever. And it was just really fun to play. I was say, I was 28, and it was like, yeah, I'm tired of playing the big arenas. It's really fun to play the club again.
Wait a minute.
That's so messed up. But at the time, it actually was. It was like, and it was also like that band started out from, I mean, it was a local super group, but it was just, you know, playing 70s covers for fun. And then we started writing originals. And before you knew it, it got real big. So he put together a new band and asked me to be in it.
Oh.
Probably 6 months later, after he broke up the NPG. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to see this Greasy Meal thing through. He's like, well, come on out and check it out. You know, got this cool girl on guitar and bass, and the Rhonda and Cat. Kirk was playing drums. So I think I went out there one day and jammed with them a little bit, and I was just like, I wasn't feeling it, and I wanted to see the Greasy Meal thing through.
True.
It was like my own thing, so.
That was your new opportunity then. I don't blame you.
So I said no.
Wow.
And don't regret it at all. Greasy Meal was the funnest years of my life. That was just a blast. Actually played a show with Julius last night.
I know you did.
Yeah.
At the rooftop.
That was great. It was so great.
Well, let's talk about one last thing. I don't even know what time it is. How are we doing on time, you fellas?
50 minutes.
50? Okay.
Yeah, 45, yeah.
All right. Yeah, we got 15 minutes left. I want to be good to you on your time. But as number one, there's one other thing we have in common. You will forever be known, and as will I, as our new moniker that our former boss gave us.
Oh, yeah.
Tommy Barbarella, St. Paul Peterson.
Yeah.
Did you ever vacillate whether you wanted to keep that name or go back to Elm? And how does that work for you?
Well, I never legally changed my name. And Therese asked me if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like when I found out that was my name, I wasn't asked about that either.
Nor was I.
The funny story was my mom saw a picture in the paper of myself, Prince, and Tony Mosley, the three of us. And she's called me and she's like, Tom, there's a picture in the paper that it looks like you, but it's not your name.
Oh my God, your mother found us out.
And that's when I saw it, or that's the first time I saw it, I think. Yeah, and then Teresa's like, well, do you want to legally change it? I'm like, I never thought, I'm like, no. So I've always just, but I did copyright it, or I trademarked it.
That's really smart.
When he broke up the band, because I'm like, well, I want to keep using it because millions of people know that name. Well, it'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
So people have questioned that, but I'm like, why not? I like it.
Yeah.
And not that he's defining me, but it's like, I don't know. I like having the professional name, and it's a cool freaking name.
It is a cool name. It is.
It's got some panache.
It does.
So
why not use it?
Yeah. So I've always used it professionally, and but I've kept my real name.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. What was the question? I forgot.
It was just a name change
Yeah.
thing. We both got different names. So coming out of the Prince camp, and I want to talk about what you've been up to since then, because it's been a long time.
Yeah.
You built yourself a life. You have done a million different things. Tell me a little bit about, you became a session musician around town with a guy across the hall here too, by the way, John Fields. You were in Greasy with him.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what records you did with him.
With John?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I don't even know.
Really?
Well, some of the early stuff was like early Miley Cyrus. I all the Disney stuff, all those guys.
Mandy Moore.
Mandy Moore, that was a good record.
She's very good, that one.
She is.
Oh, by the way, John says about you.
Oh boy.
Because I texted him last night. I said, tell me something about Tom. He said, really nothing much to say. He's the best there is. That's what he said. Yeah, I thought you might want to know that.
Well, yeah. I'm going to cry now.
So this is your life. Tom.
Well, Julia said something last night that I almost dropped a beat.
What did he say?
He said that I was the perfect musician. And again, like coming from him, it's like meaning that he's not embarrassed to play a Donny Hathaway song with me, like
right.
The deepest of soul. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll accept that. But yeah, those are great compliments.
Nice to get validation, man. I mean, you've worked so hard, and you're such an accomplished player. But it's still always nice for somebody to go, doing good, man.
Yeah, well, when it comes from people you respect, like Julius and John.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John's such a force. His energy is so fast. It's like when he moved to LA and I started sending him stuff, it was just bam, bam, bam. John
Fields is a great producer who happens to be across the hall from me at the studio that we're at right now, and he's done 1 million records. And he's just done very well for himself. Super respected in the musical community. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, Switchfoot. I did stuff on the Switchfoot records. Backstreet.
Backstreet Boys?
Oh, yeah.
Did you? I auditioned for them once.
Really?
I did not get the gig, but I auditioned. Yes, I did.
I did a string arrangement on the records, and then I ran into him in Italy, when I was doing the Georgia gig, and it was right after I'd done that, and the record came out, and, I'm like, hey, I did the string arrangement on the song on your record, and they're like, yeah, I think I saw your name in the credits. It's like, I never met.
Hey, well, that's better than piss off.
Yeah.
What did you do after the Prince camp? Tell me about your time. You worked for an agency for a while,
yeah,
right?
So the Greasy Meal thing was a constant, and during that time I joined, I started doing jingles at a place called Ash and Spencer. And this was called the heyday of jingle work. Immediately was doing Super Bowl spots, big, it was big stuff. And my reel just from those few years, those early years, it's just like eye popping, like, wow. And it was great work. It was still all union work. It was great money. So tons of jingles. So I was like on staff with them, and you're just churning stuff out. And it was a great opportunity for me to use my classical background. So there was budgets for stuff. I was arranging for choirs and strings, and so it was like wonderful to be able to flex those things I didn't get to do during the Prince years, and all the styles. There was still a lot of jazz in commercial work back then.
Interesting. Huh.
So Mark Ash, who started that company with Thad, got out. He didn't want to do it anymore, and he was kind of the piano jazz guy in house. So they needed a guy to be able to do that bag.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and that was a constant through my career for 20 years, doing the jingle thing. Different
main source of income.
Kind of was. Okay. Yeah, that was like the steady. And
right.
Still did touring and other gigs and that kind of stuff. But that was big. And then, that's all changed now.
Yeah.
Totally changed. But it was a great opportunity, and I, it helped me a lot. So I did that. did that gig over in Italy for many years with Georgia,
Right.
big Italian superstar, and that was amazing. And that was with Sonny and Michael as well. Mike Scott came over sometimes. Jeff Lee Johnson did one tour.
Michael Baker or Michael Bland?
Both.
Oh,
And we, did her records. I wrote songs with her that did well. And that was, and I remember talking about turning down gigs. I remember I took that gig after when Dave Barry was MD for Janet.
yeah.
He asked me to do the gig.
You turned down the Janet
I turned
Jackson
down the
gig?
Janet
Attaboy.
Jackson gig.
Did you really?
I did.
How come?
Probably not the smartest move in hindsight.
Did you have kids by that point?
No.
Or you were single?
Yeah.
Wow. What the hell's the matter with you?
And my reasoning was really stupid. It was right after the Prince gig. And by the end of the Prince thing, I was out front with him. I was strutting around the stage with the keyboard, the Purple Axe.
Guitar. Yeah, Purple Axe. That's right.
They didn't call it that yet back
I'm
then.
sorry. Yeah.
But
Flying, not only up front, but flying around, if
All
I remember
kinds of shit.
correctly.
You know,
you doing all sorts of silly shit, man.
Prince's band was very featured at that time in all this stuff. And then Janet had like 50 dancers.
Right.
And the band was behind the dancers. And I'm like, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But then I got to the Italy gig with those guys. That was after the Greasy Meal thing ended. And that turned into like a 7-year run. I mean, I was over there about half the year, like for
Wow.
5 to 7 years. And it was wonderful.
Not a bad place to rest your head. Davide is an Italiano, huh?
Yeah.
So
So you know about Georgia.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think if I would have taken the Janet gig, I would have been playing an enormous Coliseum in Italy with people singing back the song that I wrote with her. I mean,
Wow.
there's memories like that. That's just like, those are, never forget some of those shows and those beautiful places over there.
Overall, the biz has been pretty good to you.
I guess.
You're still here.
Still here.
Still doing gigs.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so
Tell me about the Vikings
the
gig.
Vikings thing, so I, about 10 years ago, I started working with Charles Lazarus, trumpet player with the Minnesota Orchestra. And he had his own thing, kind of his fusion-y side project that he did himself. But he also did shows like with the orchestra. So I thought this would be a good relationship to start working with him. And as I started working with him more, we would do shows with the orchestra. I got the opportunity to start doing some arrangements for the orchestra for some of his shows.
Whoa.
And it was like, yes.
Yeah.
So I kind of got to hone my arranging chops, hearing it played back by one of the world's greatest orchestras.
Man.
And,
How great is that?
it was like a chart here and there. And then when Prince passed, they asked me to do the Purple Rain arrangement that they did.
Javita and the Steels did, man. Mm-hmm. Right.
And for me, that was like a super high point of my life where it was like, I got to arrange for the orchestra. They recorded it. And the Steels are singing it. And it was like my whole career kind of full circle. Mm-hmm. And then a couple years later, the next year, I arranged an entire show for the orchestra, for Charles Lazarus with the orchestra featuring the Steels. Like 22 charts or something, like the whole program. So, yeah. And then more recently, they asked me to write this piece for the Vikings.
What do they call it?
Symphony of the North.
Yes, Symphony of the North. It's cool. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You have to find it on YouTube or whatever. But they play it as the players are coming in, right?
Yeah, so they gave me tickets to that first game, first home game, and louder than shit in there. It's just like, ugh, but it's like pretty powerful.
That's my song.
it was pretty fun. So yeah,
Tell me about the greatest job you've got, and that's being hubby and dad. Tell me
yeah,
about your family.
yeah. So I, my wife and I've been married 15 years,
Congratulations.
together 20 years, I think. 3 kids, 2 girls, 13, 15, and 21-year-old son. I'm sorry, 23-year-old. They
Hard to believe, isn't
they
it?
keep getting older.
I know, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I got off the road when my youngest was 1. I was touring with Johnny Lang at the time. Be going out for a month or so at a time, coming back for a few days, and I come back and my youngest was looking at me like, "Who's this guy?" And I'll never forget. It was 4th of July. I was home for like a day and a half, and we had to fly out like at 5 o'clock on the 4th of July. So it's like I did like we have a neighborhood morning 4th of July thing, which is pretty cool. I did that, and I had to leave and say goodbye. And we flew into Denver, and as we were coming in, they're looking out the window and seeing the fireworks, and I just got so sad. I'm like, I should be with my family right now. I want to be laying in a blanket, watching fireworks with my family. And that's the moment I decided, can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I want my kids to know who I am. So I kind of made that conscious choice, and turned down some other big gigs after
Did
that
you?
too. Maroon 5.
Did you really?
You know who
what,
got the gig though?
Who?
PJ Morton.
Oh, really? Interesting. By you turning that down, you probably helped him out. You know.
I think that's who got it. But yeah, it was like a 2-year commitment, 2-year tour. It was just like,
I'm sure.
nah. And I told who was 1 at the time, and now she's 13. I told her about that the other day. She's like, "You did what?" Like, yeah, all for you.
Yeah.
Again,
Good decision, man.
don't regret anything.
Good
you know?
decision.
And now, yeah, they grow up so fast, and now it's like, yeah, you only get one shot at that.
Boy, and that's why I said it's the most important gig you'll ever have.
Yeah.
It really is. And you still live in the neighborhood. You're involved in playing at church, man. That you're a man of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And you said Catholic guilt earlier, and I know you and I go to the same church, so it's always fun to see your face there. And we've done some stuff there together, so it's always good to know that you're there because I know the music's going to be good, and that's where I raised my kids in that church, St. Joan of Arc in South Minneapolis.
Yeah.
What else is left? What else do you want to do, man?
Well, there's one thing I really want to do, and project that's super close to my heart. So my older daughter, the 15-year-old, she has something called Williams syndrome, which is a super rare genetic condition, and she's very unique. People with Williams syndrome are. They say they're the happiest people in the world. They're like they're very outgoing. They're very social, super social, and super musical. And there's a huge spectrum of abilities with the syndrome, and she's very high functioning. She's definitely got her struggles and with school and stuff, but she's very musical. And it's not quite the music like we know. Like it's always a little different, but
That's all right.
she's amazing. And so a couple years ago, she started middle school, right? So new school, middle school, girl with a disability. So, she was telling us stuff about it. And one of the things we used to do is go to the piano, go around the piano like before dinner, after dinner, and play show tunes, or she loves Broadway.
Yeah.
And I would just start playing something, and she'd start singing. I'm like, what was that? And I'm like, do that again. And I'm like, that sounds like a song. So we started writing songs.
No.
And she has this amazing innate ability to improvise great melodies and lyrics on the spot. And I just started compiling them on my phone, probably 100 of them, and started producing them up, finishing off the songs. And, you know, she's done some theater, but I was like, yeah, she's probably never going to get a leading role.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you know what? Let's write our own musical. So we've been working on a musical for the last 3 years. She came up with this title. She just blurted out one day at dinner, "The Girl Who Cried Different." And I'm like, oh,
what a great title.
My God, that's the perfect title.
That is a great title.
So it's all about, you know, middle school, being a girl, new school, mean popular girls, boys, catty stuff, all this, the horrible stuff that is middle school.
Right.
You know, so we've been working on that. Been talking to people about it. We just kind of premiered some of it. We were the entertainment for this fundraiser last weekend or 2 weeks ago. United Voices of Minnesota. It's kind of the first reveal of any of that, and but that's something I want to see through in however that's going to end up. But there's something about it, and that I can't let go of. And obviously, it's a wonderful thing for her and I to do together. And you know, talk about leaving a legacy. And it's like, well, I could do all the sessions or whatever, but it's like, if I finish this with her, and this is like something we leave behind as a piece of work, it's like, that's a real thing that I can be proud of. And so, yeah, that's the thing that's kind of I'm most passionate about right now.
How close are you?
The music's good.
Okay.
But we got to find someone to write the book, as they call it. But pieces are in place. It's hard. It's like, it's kind of, you know, you juggle all these different projects as a freelance guy, and unfortunately that kind of ends up at the end of the line most days. But slowly but surely, it's going somewhere, I think.
What a beautiful legacy that would be for you and your family, man. Really.
And I was just like, love taking on another, you know, like when I started arranging for orchestra, it's like I ran into someone, educator, I can't think of his name. He was like, well, did you train for that? I'm like, nope. He's like, that's amazing.
Well, you throw yourselves into situations where you can't do anything but learn, because you always do quality work. You always do things. And I like that uncomfortable spot where I don't want to fail.
Yeah.
And I have to come up to the level.
Right.
So I don't suck, because there's a no suck policy in my contract. Right. So I don't know if that's how you operate too, but it's a challenge, isn't it?
With the challenge of, like musical theater, it's like, it's not like I haven't done any of that, but I've never written anything. So I know David Foster's trying to do the same thing right now.
Well,
but
I want to hear yours before Dave.
Yeah.
Brother, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's fun to, sometimes when you get to this age, you got to book a gig or a podcast just to hang out with each other.
Got the truth.
Because life is nuts, and I know how busy you are, so thank you for taking the time out.
Yeah. Well, you got quite a setup here.
It's the old haunt, man. Creation Studios, from 1955 on, I guess. And it's great to
have all these cameras set up.
Well, that's true. That's because these guys are pros. They make us look and sound good. Anyways, thank you, brother, for everything. Tommy Barbarella, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Guess what? Next episode is 50. What are we going to do? I don't know. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Music on the Run was hosted by yours truly, St. Paul Peterson. Edited and produced by my buddy, Davide Raso. Video editing by Tanner Montague. And a very special thanks to the people who financially support this podcast. And remember, the Prince connection is a bond that lasts forever. Yeah.